And this week it's my great pleasure to introduce you all to Pip Loader. I've been working in a joint mentoring environment with Pip for a few months now, and we've become firm friends. We actually meet on a Friday via Zoom for a bit of a peer coaching and mentoring session across the ditch. She's a Kiwi, so one of the things that's terrible about that is she's often gloating about rugby. Well, the All Blacks aren't winning now, are they, Pip? But that's just because they're not allowed to play, I suspect, and it won't be long before they work out how to win anyway, I suspect. Pip's a bit of a master in the spaces of innovation and storytelling in business, and I really value her contribution for her artful way of asking insightful questions and framing deep reflective processes. And she's going to talk us through one of those, the Savo. So Pip, without much further ado, I reckon I'll hand it over to you. Let me just find you there and unmute you. And you have the floor. Go for your life.
I love it. Thank you. The All Blacks are not playing at the moment, so there's no gloating about that. And actually, I was reading today about apparently Australians are still as happy as they were in this time last year, according to a latest happiness report.
I think that's probably largely due to the fact that Australians tend to show up to things like this with their footy shorts and their double plugger thongs on and going, so what's going on here? Should we be worried about this? Nah, she'll be right.
I love it. I love it. Cool. I'll kick in. Mike's told me to stick to time, and I actually showed up on time today, which is very good. When you're doing a session about showing up, it's good to show up on time. So I work with mostly with leaders and their teams, helping them better connect, create, and deliver impact in their day-to-day work. And I do a lot of work around meaningful leadership. And meaningful leadership to me is all about how we show up consistently as leaders and the message that that sends to our teams, how we shape up a winning team culture and continue to develop and refresh that from a purpose and people perspective as our games change over time, and how we build up our people to have the beliefs and the skills and the tools to be able to perform at their best and be innovative in their work and help leaders build better future leaders. And it's the showing up part that I want to talk about and share with you for the next 20 minutes, the tool that I use around that and that I use in a lot of my workshops. And before I do, I recently decided to adapt the biblical timescale. And the idea came to me when I was dressing up last week. Was it last week? Week before, as Jesus. It wasn't last week, because last week I dressed up as a pirate. So I have a weekly Zoom chat with Mike, as he mentioned. And a couple of weeks ago, I said that I dressed up as a Mexican. And I had on a big sombrero and a Mexican moustache. And then for a few extra laughs, I said, every week for the future, I'm going to dress up as something. And so a couple of weeks ago, I went all out. I'd kind of do things on a grand scale if I can. And so I dressed up as Jesus. And while I was dressing up as Jesus, I got to think about the BC AD time scale, BC standing for before Christ and AD standing for Anno Domini, the year Jesus was born. And so I've taken a bit of creative license and adapted the biblical time scale. So BC for me now is before COVID, and the AD stands for after distancing. And so it's the AD times that we're in now. And I believe it's really important that we continue to show up as the best versions of ourselves, and in whatever role that is for yourself and for the people that need you in this current environment. And as Mike said, for me in New Zealand, we're at level 4 lockdown, which is awful, if I'm honest. We've been like this for 3 weeks now, and We've got only essential things open, so supermarkets and chemists and petrol stations. That's it from a retail perspective. Can't even send my husband to Bunnings to do jobs around the house. And hospitals and local and central government services, but that's it. So lockdown for us is very intense, and it's stay at home and don't go out, only to exercise or go to the supermarket. So I've done a lot of exercise in the last 3 weeks just to get out of my house. And so for me, I'm a bit of a raving extrovert who thrives on the company of other people. And I get my energy from being around people physically. And so this is quite possibly my worst nightmare. And it's also the time that you better actually like who you're in lockdown with, because they're physically all you've got. And for me, that is my husband of 16 years and my 10-year-old son. And thankfully, I like them both for now. You might want to ask me in another month or two, and we'll see. Joking. Kind of. So my world has changed, as I imagine yours has too. And I believe the best thing we can do right now for ourselves and for others is to be very deliberate and very intentional about how we're showing up. And how we show up is something that we can control right now amidst the things that feel out of control in this current environment. I also, so I believe that life is a series of balloon rides, and I've got I do lots of sketching and draw lots of balloons. And if we're to think about a hot air balloon and how it gets off the ground, we've got to make sure that there's some fire pumping some hot air into that balloon so that it can rise. We've got to be in the basket for the ride, and we need to untether the sandbags that are holding us down so that we can go higher. And we've all had many different rides in our lives, and will continue to do, and they shape the people that we are today. And those balloon rides will continue to change, and circumstances will change, and new challenges will come up, and you'll need to come back down from that ride and reset and reimagine and relaunch and go off again. So when life changes, or your situation changes, or Mother Nature throws us one hell of a curveball like the one that we're dealing with now, it's an opportunity to revisit how you're showing up and how we're showing up. And sometimes there can be a bit of a disconnect between how you want to show up versus how you need to show up. And the other day I didn't want to show up at all. I was tired, and I was frustrated, and I was annoyed with being at home and pissed off, and I was basically just a grumpy pants, which is not very pleasant. I wasn't very pleasant to be around. And how I wanted to show up was to stay in my bed in my pajamas reading my book and not coming out all day, which is impossible when you've got a 10-year-old in the house. So that was how I wanted to show up. How I needed to show up was as a functioning mother, or semi-functioning mother, for my son, and to do stuff with him that was fun and not on a screen, and to kind of keep him engaged and entertained. He did remind me that it's technically the school holidays, or it was a couple of weeks ago. So there's a want versus need too, want to show up versus need to show up, and the decision is all around how you're going to show up, because that's the part that you can choose and that you have control over. So what does your balloon ride look like right now? So I like to sketch, as I said. This is one of my sketches. So if you want to play along for the next 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and while I'm chatting, grab a piece of paper, draw a hot air balloon on the left, and we can work through this together. And before you say I can't draw, it's just circles and a square. A couple of squares in a circle and a stick figure, and no one's going to see it because you're at home by yourself. So it doesn't matter. So at the start of each year, I do an exercise with myself, and it's generally all about what this year's balloon ride looks like, and what's that journey that I'm on for the year, and how I'm going to lead myself through it, and how I'm going to show up. And I also use this framework when there's something specific that I'm showing up to, or showing up for, or for an event, or when something changes in my life. So whenever I need to be intentional about how I show up, I use this framework as a starting point. in Mike's book, which I'm sure you've all read, Thrive and Adapt, he talks about see, shift and do, and the do part being about what we do consistently to set us up for success, and how we show up is part of that do. So I'm just going to talk through it, and if you're playing along at home, great. Feel free to put thoughts and comments in the chat box. Can you see my screen? No. Hang on. There we go. Can you see my screen now? Yes, thumbs up. Oh, so you wouldn't have got what I'm talking about. So draw a balloon, there you go, there it is. Circles, squares, and some stick figures. So I'm just going to talk through this and chuck some comments in the chat box. Like I said, I think Mike's going to keep an eye on that so I don't have to keep switching in and out. So the balloon represents how we're going to show up, and it's the big part that other people see. It's our body language, it's our verbal language, it's our behaviors, it's what we see and say and do and how we act, and it's also what we see when we take a look at ourselves. How we show up is what shapes our character and our identity over time. All of our different journeys and experiences and different jobs, the things that have shaped the people that we are today, are that big part of the balloon. And how you show up is a choice, and it's always a choice. And there is a beautiful book called, I don't know if you can see that, called The Choice. And it's by Edith Eger. She's a Holocaust survivor. And when she was 16, she was sent to Auschwitz, and this book is all about her life and what she went through. And she says you can't change what happened to you, but you can change what you did. You can't change what you did or what was done to you, but you can choose how you live now. And we're certainly not choosing what's happening to us in this current environment, but we can choose how we respond by bringing our best self to the table. And we need to do this in a way that is above the line, and those above the line behaviours are around ownership and accountability and responsibility, versus the below the line behaviours around blame and excuses and denial. So there's a great quote that I love, which is, you are not what you do, but who you are being while you are doing it. And I love that, and I think it's so true, and it speaks to character. Thinking about and being intentional about how we show up can be done at a holistic level. So how am I going to show up in general in my life, and also at a more specific level, so showing up for a particular time and in a particular role. And it's useful to be clear about how we're going to show up across the different roles that we might have. And we have multiple roles that we play in our lives. At work, you might be a team leader, you're also a team player, you're also a colleague. And in our private lives, we can be parents and partners and siblings and sisters and friends, and we have lots of different roles that we fill. So for those of you playing along, pick a role that you currently play that you might need to perhaps review how you're showing up, or you just want to have a look at that through that lens. Could be parent or partner, or it could be team member or chief executive or leader. I did this recently in my different roles as a mum, a wife, a daughter, and a business owner, and how I was going to show up during this lockdown, just to make sure I was intentional about it, except for the one day that I wanted to stay in bed. But once you've decided on the role that you're going to apply, think about and write down how you're going to show up in that role during this time, and what that might look like for you. When I think about showing up, it's as my best self. So I'm also a bit of an all-in, not-in person. So what does being all-in look and feel like in an above-the-line way? not half in or half-assed or half-hearted, but all in. And the playing big part is, what does playing big look like? If you're going to show up in a big way playing big, not playing a small game like Tiddlywinks, but playing big like the Hunger Games, but without the killing. Although there might be killing in my family if this lockdown continues past 4 weeks, but we'll see. So love, for those that want to and are playing along, love for you to share in the chat box how you're going to show up over the next wee while and what that looks like for you in a particular role. I did this yesterday with a corporate team, and one of them said, big patience and big kindness. That's how I want to show up and how I need to show up for my team. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. So once we know how we want to show up, then it's a matter of what do we need to let go of, what do we need to keep, and what do we need to bring that are going to help us show up in that particular way. So the sandbags represent the things that we need to let go of in this moment. So what thoughts and behaviours do you need to let go of that might be holding you back or that are unhelpful at this point in time? They could be limiting beliefs around what you can and can't do, or behaviours that you know aren't serving you. I love it. Doug's going to show up happy, looking for opportunity. Nice, Doug. Showing up happy is a good way to start. So what do you need to let go of, Doug, in order for you to show up happy? So what are the things that are holding you back? And there are two kind of useful lenses for looking at this. There's the mindset lens, the what am I thinking? And then there's the behavior lens, what am I doing? And in the thinking mindset space, this is around what thoughts am I having that aren't useful, that I need to let go of. Georgia Murch calls this the itty bitty shitty committee that goes on in your head, which I love. And it sounds better when you say that with an Australian accent, probably not a New Zealand accent. It seems to rhyme better. But what are those thoughts in your head that you need to let go of? And in the doing part, the behaviours piece, it's what are the things that you're doing right now that aren't useful or that actually don't really matter right now and getting in the way of how you want to show up. And sometimes you also need to let go of people. I'm a firm believer that people come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And we learn from all of these people, good people and bad people, but we learn something. They all have something to teach us, no matter how long they're around for. So if there are people in your life that you need to let go of because they're negatively impacting your energy or your space, then let them go. And I reckon now's almost the perfect time to do this because we're in lockdown, which is a really great reason not to see these people if you don't want to, because you've got a really good excuse. And then when we come out of lockdown, you could just never see them again. And that would be, you can just let them go. So identifying the things that aren't serving you, the things that you can let go of. When I did this activity with my son at the beginning of lockdown, 3 AD, he suggested that he could let go of showering every day because it's not as though anyone was visiting. And so he didn't think that he needed to shower. It did lead to a big discussion around personal hygiene because I'm stuck in the house with 2 men. So thankfully for us, showering is back on the table. But it might be around making every Zoom meeting if you're in a corporate environment, or tidy house, or I think the Zoom fatigue piece is going to start to hit. And I can think of nothing worse than back-to-back Zoom meetings. So maybe there's some things that you can let go around that work, in that workspace. I was talking to a person recently who said we've taken our crappy in-person meetings that we had at work and we're now having crappy online meetings at home. And I said you could probably not go to some of those. So when you start to identify what you can let go of and what's not serving you, you can do something about it. So keen to hear what people want to let go of in the chat box, although this is the part that people are not overly happy to share sometimes, so I don't mind if you don't. But chuck something in there if there's stuff that you think you could let go of that aren't serving you right now. If it's a person and they're also on this call, probably don't put their name in the chat box because that could be super awkward. So the basket piece is then all about what you need to keep. And this is it's your support, and it's what holds you together on this journey and on this ride. And so you're in the basket, you're the pilot, and it's your journey, and you need to know your strengths and your good bits and the stuff that you already do and think that is the good bits, and the things that you do that make a difference and that make you feel good. And it's really important to know what those are and keep doing those, because they will help you show up as that best version of yourself. There are also people that you will want in your basket that are along for that ride. Some of them you don't have a choice about at the moment because you might be locked down with them. But these are the people that will support you and encourage you and challenge you and want to see you succeed. I have a lot of diversity in my basket. Not only do I have people around me that encourage me and support me, I also have people that aren't afraid to challenge me and to ask me really tough questions. Thank you, Mike. And to tell me when I'm being a bit shit. And so they're also useful people to have in that basket, and people that hold you accountable. So know who you are in your basket and who are the people in it with you. And maybe in the chat box, chuck in some good bits that you're choosing to keep right now that are helping you show up in that way. For me, it's around exercise and meditation and playing the piano. And for other people that I've talked to at work, it's less team meetings, but keeping the right people in those meetings and making sure that the right people are in those calls. And then the last piece, which is my favorite, it's the gas, the flame, the fuel. And this is what you need to bring in order for you to rise up and show up as your best self, all in, playing big. And it's what you need to bring to go on this particular ride. So without the fuel part, you're not even going to inflate the balloon, let alone get it off the ground. So bring what you need in order to lift yourself. And the bring is all about learning and adding new skills, new behaviors, new beliefs that are going to help you show up on this ride, or more of something that you already have, but now's the time to really bring it. So it might be, do you need to bring a new habit of exercising, or do you need to bring in more routine and structure, or more meditation, or more gratitude? And what are those new or amplified thoughts and behaviors that you need to bring that are going to help you show up as that person that you want to show up in? And those new skills that you need to learn. I reckon we've got a whole lot of time at the moment on our hands for learning and absorbing and reading and watching and learning lots of new things. One of the things that I needed to bring into the AD times was more routine and structure. So with my son at home and my husband working from home, and it technically being the school holidays, I needed to find a way to fit work in around my family. And that looked like a new routine and a more structured day. So that was short mini bursts of activity throughout the day with my son, and then getting up at 4:30 in the morning to do my writing on my book and my work till 9 o'clock, so that I could then hang out with Jack and feel like I had achieved something in my work capacity. So my routine changed quite significantly. And now I go to bed at the same time as my son every night at like 8:15, because I get up early. So what is it that you need to bring? Mike House is writing a book too. That's good. And it does take courage to be consistent around that. So work out what you need to bring. And then that's my very quick how to show up. And I think that showing up is it's half the battle, and it's quite a mental battle, and we need to be quite deliberate and intentional about it. So if we can give thought to how we're going to show up as our best selves on whatever journey that we're on at the moment and what that looks like, and be deliberate and intentional about what that looks like and how we're going to show up, and what we need to let go of, what we need to keep, and what we need to bring to show up all in, playing big. And if showing up is half the battle, then the other half of the battle is simply the action piece. And I think we also need to go lightly with ourselves right now, and with those other people in our basket. And there have been days over the past 21 that I have not shown up as my best self. But instead of beating myself up about it, just doing that quick reset, going, how did I actually show up today? Was it in line with how I was going to? No. What happened? What do I need to let go of and bring tomorrow to have another crack at showing up as my best self for me and for those people in my bubble? And I think that's it, really. Your life is a series of balloon rides, so show up in the best way that you can as your best self, all in, playing big, and make it count.